Now, usually when we talk about wow, we're thinking about a week of Webisodes, but today we have some wow embossing powder from a company that's called Wow Embossing Powder.
We have ultra-high embossing powders and embossing glitter. And all of the projects are really going to be a big wow.
Come play with us. Well, here are the wow embossing powders. Well, here's some of them anyway.
Right. We have the ultra high down at the bottom. They're a real coarse grained embossing powder with some really neat effects. We have them in copper, gold, silver, black, and white.
And one thing I want to say about this is that these are really large containers, and we really felt that, especially with the holidays and so forth, you might just be going through this stuff, and
right.
That way we can get you some savings too. Now the top row is of course the glitter, the red and the green, and then this is clear embossing powder, so again in the larger size.
And that's a super fine clear gloss, so
right.
some really neat things you can do with that.
And I want to tell you that if you're looking at the printed September Paper Wishes,
right.
the prices were mistakenly printed incorrectly. However, when you order, they will be perfect.
Right.
So that's important to know. Okay, so we're going to slip these away.
Move them off to the side, roll them away.
And we're going to start with this first one. And this mixes a couple of different things. To begin with, it is using the gold and the white of the embossing powder.
So here they are.
Right.
So the gold is in the ultra high, and the white is this ultra high as well. I do think we should sort of look at them just to show you how coarse they are, so that even when just little sprinkles of them can leave these big dots, and it's just really kind of neat. So,
and when you're saying that they're coarse, I didn't want you to think that you can't get some good detail. So that's why this card was done. This is using the indigo blue. It's called a dinky stamp, and I think it's only because it's little. See, it's just that big. And but it does a really nice job. Plus, it's absolutely a charming stamp.
Right.
And
so each one of those little dots that you see is one of those grains of the ultra-high embossing powder.
And you can see the white down at the bottom. Isn't that? I just absolutely love that effect in any of the colors.
It's great for snow.
It is.
And a lot of other things.
It is. Now, this is also done on the heat-resistant acetate, and this is something that we came out with this year. There are 5 sheets in here, and yes, it did take us months and months and months and months to find an acetate that would really fit the bill.
So now you can get this great window effect with those ultra-high embossing powders on that acetate without warping, and it's just beautiful. You can pile it up down on the bottom, use Versamark to make it stick, but also heating from the bottom is a good idea so that some of it doesn't blow away. It does get kind of thick.
And this card has the 4 lacy rectangles on the outside of it, which I think is really such a pretty look around, kind of a snowman, a snow lady.
Around the snowman. This is on the darkroom papers too.
Yes, it is. And then on the inside, this is a piece of the navy suede and some dazzles right there. So just a really, really pretty look.
It is. It's an adorable look. There's just one little bow down here just finishes it off.
Great deal. And you don't have to do it on the acetate. You can certainly do it on anything. But I thought a golden snowman was really perfect. Now this is showcasing the green, as you can see. And this is not the ultra, but I just wanted to make sure that you could see the detail that that's getting in that lacy stamp.
So that's super fine glitter in there, and that's why you can get that detail. And that's with the green embossing glitter. You could easily do that with the red glitz or the green glitz. They're such a, and that's a nice true red. That's what I like about it. Really Christmassy looking.
Very good. And there's the green. Now this too was done on acetate. So let me shine it so you can see. There you go. So that was done. So just to give you another example, that is also on the bottom are red burlap flowers, and just a beautiful look.
It is. It's just a nice touch down there. I also like the little tag up here stamped on the left, and I think that was colored in with Spectrum Noir.
It looks like it is. We're going to move to the clear embossing powder, and this is a really striking look. This is the, it gives you a tone on tone when you stamp on a colored cardstock. In this case it's red cardstock, and then you use the clear embossing powder, and so you get this tone on tone with a slightly darker tone under the clear.
So no other ink is needed. You just stamp it on there, and then it does that naturally because of that gloss. I also like that these little medallions were stamped and cut out individually. So that's a really neat thing. There's a lot of neat things you can do with that clear, including you can put them on top of die cuts and make them more glossy than they normally are. So that's another look.
Yeah, so I mean some things that are just really very, very effective but yet easy to do. And just love that look. Beautiful. Okay, now we're going to get into copper, one of my favorite looks. And what I love about this, well actually this is mixing copper and gold. So we're going to go up here and we're going to look at the tag, and with the edging around the edge, edging around the edge, you like that?
So with the copper, that copper edge die cut, these are from the Darkroom Die Cuts. And they have nice big labels on there, like that one, which seems to be one of our favorites.
It seems to be, doesn't it? So these are the die cuts. There's 64. So there's 2 sheets. So there's 32 on each sheet, and that's the one you're talking about. So lots of looks, but I just love how this has been embellished.
And first it was computer journal, because you don't want to run something that's been embossed like this through your laser printer or anything else. So first computer journal it, and you can look on our 101 sites to, or one of the class sites to see how that's done. But I've got one of those die cuts here. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can just take a Versamark ink pad and just swipe the edges of it and get it, you know, pretty much where you want it that way. But Debbie chose to use the Versamarker. That's a Versamark watermark pen. So she could really put it right where she wanted. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and there's 2 ends to this. There's a fine tip, and then there's sort of a brush type end, and I'm going to use that end to just swipe around the edges. And I'm just going to do a little bit of this. All you have to do is get the Versamark on there, and then you can sprinkle it with the copper ultra high embossing powder there. That's about all I'm going to do right at the moment. And then just pour some of this stuff on. I love the big bottles because you can sort of, you don't have to worry about, gee, do I have to be really careful and dainty?
Do I have enough?
We're just going to pour it on, and then it's all going to go back in there, hopefully, when we're done. Pour it on, shake it off, and there you go. If you, take this? Yeah, sure. If you don't like the edging, if you feel like it's a little too uniform, you can sort of use your finger and push it around. But I'm going to go ahead and heat that. Got my heat gun all ready to go. Oh, hold on, bring it back. Just a little bit. Make sure. There we go. And I'm going to start by heating from beneath. There's a couple of different schools of thought on this. Just start underneath and heat through, and then move to the top. Susan likes to start from the top, but she starts a good 7 or 8 inches away. It takes a lot longer, and it works great, but I'm generally impatient, so I start from underneath.
True confession here, good to know.
So I'll just keep moving that around. On a die cut, you don't want to stay in one place too long. You don't want to scorch it. You can sort of see the edges turning there.
And you're holding that pretty close underneath.
Well, I could go a little further. You want to be careful. You don't want to get too close, but let me see if I can move it to the top without it blowing away. I think we're there. Yep. Great. So just, and see how thick, I mean, all I did was Versamark it once, sprinkled it once, and it made this very thick edging in just one application.
And that's what the ultra thick does. It just is gorgeous on there, isn't it? Yes.
You know, I'm going to point out one little point on here. If you heat it for a long time, it'll puddle like that and get this really smooth look. If you heat it just a little less time, you get a little bit more of the grainy look, like right before it puddles, and that's a great look too.
And I think on this piece, it's a little more of the grainy. I guess it's a mix of grainy and puddle, so that's nice that you can control it.
Right.
I just think it's a beautiful edging.
Oh,
now,
yes.
she also used gold on the edges of her mats around her photos.
Right,
So,
and she did use the Versamark pen on that. She just edged all of them very quickly and just sprinkled them with the gold. It's just
very
beautiful.
pretty. Now, look at the ends of the ribbon. This is crepe ribbon
That's great.
that has the gold on it.
Right, and that's done the same thing, just Versamark and then dipped in that or sprinkled with it. You do want to be very careful with the heat gun when you're heating the crepe ribbon.
Oh,
you want to
sure.
stay away from it and do it in a slow way, keeping it about 7 or 8 inches away.
Have patience. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
I love that the paper toll was done, and this is the reason that she chose the Versamarker, because she knew she was going to have some detail to do right on those small pieces on the paper toll, and then cover them in the gold and the copper and heat emboss them.
And the dot that's there, that's just beautiful.
Make sure that you use tweezers when you're holding little pieces like
Yes.
this, so that you don't burn your fingers when you're heating that.
And that's a gold area right there. So scrapbookers, you are not left out of this by any means. And I think it's fun to see the gold and the copper mixed, because most of the time we kind of stay with one and rather mixing them. Okay, I have a couple of projects that we have shown before, but they're really appropriate right now, and this is one. So this is using, and there is the white and the ultra thick, and you can see how it's puddling down here.
Right.
It's just gorgeous on this torn paper.
This can be done by really piling that high. In that case, if you're going to just Versamark it, sprinkle it on, and then tap it off, then you can heat it from above by a certain distance. If you're really going to pull it up and get a high amount of that on there, you're going to have to heat it from beneath to make sure it doesn't blow everywhere. But I think that was a torn edge, and then it was done, and it just sort of melts over the edge. And
I really like the the dot effect that you get as this is just swooping up and around.
Like little bits of snow falling everywhere. There's also some silver on there, so I'm quite certain that the silver zing was sprinkled along the edge too, and that was what was used to stamp the ice skate. So.
Now here is just one more that we did show before, but really wanted to see again, because this is the silver ultra thick, and it's been used on the center. We first showed you the die cut on the outside, but you can also do kind of a frame on the inside.
Right, you can just use your Versamark ink pad and just swipe an area on the center, sprinkle it, and like I say, if you get too uniform an edge on the edge, then just use your finger and sort of move it around till you get more of a casual look, and then heat it. And I love that puddle, which we're going to see on the next one.
We are. Speaking of puddle, this is a super puddle, and this is happening where the puddle of embossing powder is done and then stamped into it. So this is, just absolutely love the copper with the dark room. Also on the edge of this card, look at that, how beautiful that looks. Now I have another card that is using this same technique, this time with the black ultra thick, and you're going to do something.
I'm actually going to do the camera.
Okay.
But it's the same thing. The technique is deep embossing. So with the camera, Susan started out with black cardstock.
Right.
She Versamarked a center area on this, and so I'm just going to go ahead and. I believe that she cut the cardstock to the size that she wanted before she did this.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it a little easier for me to heat from beneath by doing this, cutting it after, and then you can reheat the edges to get that melt over effect on the edges.
Okay.
So there, I want to make sure that that's as big as my stamp. Oh, it's about as big as the stamp pad. So there we go. And in this one, what Susan did is she did this in several layers. So she heated it once, added another layer, heated it again.
Oh, even though it's the ultra thick,
Even though, yeah, because she wanted just a super big layer. I'm not leaving that much on there, don't worry. I'm going to get some of that. So I'm going to go ahead and shake it, or tap it off there. It's
get
getting
that out of your
everywhere.
way.
I didn't quite use a big enough thing underneath, did I?
Okay.
Here, this is going to be a mess, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out.
There we go.
So
Should have done that in the
that'll be ready
beginning,
to
huh?
heat, I suppose. And I'm going to heat this up, and afterwards I'm going to be stamping it with the black surfaces, because it will stamp onto different kinds of materials. You want to use the surfaces for stamping onto the embossing powder. I'm going to ink it up, and then I'm going to have it handy, ready to go. If possible, you want to leave it on there so it'll stay kind of wet. And then I start heating it. Now, Susan said to stay 7 inches away.
And she said to be patient?
And she said to be patient. I might revert to going underneath, but this is another way of doing it. I can see it moving a little bit, but it doesn't move a whole lot. So I'll just sort of keep focused. Okay, that's how patient I am.
It's kind of like watching paint dry.
It is. It does take a while, and I don't know if I'm going to need to. I know that she added another layer. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I will add one more layer, because that's what Susan did. Because we want it to be thick enough. So you want to be patient. You want to just make sure that it's all heated. Once we get to the part where we're deep embossing into this, we're going to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, because you do need to, because you don't want it to set up firmly.
Right.
So there is a time element in here.
I love watching it turn.
I do too. I think it's always magic.
Yeah. I'm going to move my fingers. There we go.
That are getting warm.
Yeah. I think this is a good point to go ahead and add a second layer. So I'm just going to leave this right here and add a little more on there.
So, oh, you're not putting more Versamark, you're just putting more of the powder?
That would be good too.
Would that be good? Should we have talked about that earlier?
Well, yeah, okay, so at this point, you would use a little more Versamark. I've done both.
Some might, others wouldn't.
I've done both.
It's your choice. But if you don't add more Versamark, you better keep the heat gun underneath, right?
You better keep the heat gun underneath. It's going to work out just as well in the end, but so you're learning.
So I can stop giggling over here.
I don't mind getting a little messy. So crafting can be a messy job. So I'm going to continue to heat. It's going right through.
It is.
Boy, I'm going to really take it to task here. Here we go. Come on.
Maybe if you put the heat gun right on it, it will melt faster.
I'm being careful. I'm being careful. And you be careful too out there in
TV land.
Yeah. Okay, so it's heating, it's moving.
There it is.
It's so nice when you're done, you get this big, beautiful puddle on the top. And on the edges you see those grains, and I kind of like that too.
I do too. Now, it's taking, because you've got such a large area there, right. Are you concerned about some of it setting up before you get a chance to put the stamp on?
Well, that's why I'm going to end by doing this on the top, which I'm ready to. So what I do is, for me, I do kind of a two-handed process. I've got that stamp over here, inked up. You can really see it pulling around. Which
is what you want. You want it to be liquid.
That's what you want. You want it to be molten.
What can I do?
And I think I'm good.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Here we go.
Okay. Stamp.
There we go.
And you do want to use the black ink pad because you want to see the ink in it. Now you're letting it rest there for just a minute.
I'm doing it the way Susan said. She said she likes to leave it there until it cools, which I hadn't done, but that's what she did.
I hadn't done it that way either.
So that she counted to about 10, she said, and then removed it.
Okay.
And got this wonderful impression. Look at that.
Isn't that? Oh, look at the depth.
Yeah. Oh, you
wow.
Really, I really got a good impression on that.
You really did.
It's worth it.
It is.
A little bit.
A little patience, folks.
The next thing that she does is wait until until it's cool enough.
More of that waiting stuff, huh?
And then you can crack it.
Yes.
So I want to see if we can. It's still pretty warm. I want to see if it'll crack yet. No, it really has to be cooled off to crack. I could come back to it in a second and show that.
Shall we show something else?
Let's show something else.
Here is a very different look, and I've not ever seen this done. This is using an embossing folder, so it's our Merry Christmas. And look, this is the Silver Ultra, And it's along the edge as well as just tracing over the Mary, the banner, the Christmas, and the flourishes.
So isn't that beautiful?
It's gorgeous.
Right. So this is just with the Versamark on the top part of that embossed
So the
piece.
pen again?
Right. Well, no, not the pen.
No.
Just the Versamark's pad. I would just run it across. You can also use a brayer for this, but I'm just going to use the pad.
Okay.
And make sure that it's sort of higher in the middle.
This is obviously on black cardstock.
On black cardstock, and I'm just going to try to hit the top. And if it gets anywhere else, I can use a paintbrush, Susan says, to remove some of those extra little things. And I wouldn't use a pen along the top of all of those little, that would take far too long.
It would take a while, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So for me it would. Okay, so we've got that on there, and I'm going to use the red.
Oh, you are?
Because I want to see what it looks like afterwards. And
like you said, it's such a beautiful red. We kind of struggle sometimes with getting a good red in embossing powders.
I kind of think that there's something about red pigment that it's a little bit harder to duplicate
I think you're right.
in the colors that you like. Okay, there we go. Oops. Oh my goodness, that really, well.
Now what are we going to do?
Oh, well, she did say if you have a little extra, then you, okay, let me try this too. That's a little better.
Okay, that does take a lot.
You can go through and remove some of it in this way. I wasn't going to heat this, I was just going to show you the technique. Look, I have done this before and it doesn't always do that. So if you use a light hand on top of there, or if you use a brayer, it's not going to be quite so thick in between. It'll just
stay on the top edge.
Are we satisfied with that? That would actually work?
I think we are.
Okay, because we can see that Susan did it.
Yes, we can see that Susan did it.
And I have done it before.
Now this red part and the green part, those are stickles. So just so that you know, just squeezed in, and you can kind of use your pen knife like this to scoot the stickles around a little bit. So if you need to do that, that works pretty well. And I just thought it was just quite beautiful on the embossing folder. So
it was.
Now you're going to crack?
I'm going to crack. I already tested it to make sure it would work. I'm going to go around the edges and just do it kind of quickly. Here, got one big one. You have to sort of move it around. There we go.
Yeah, and then what happened? Now what I appreciate about this is that it used to be, without the ultra thick, is you would have to put, something like 7 layers of embossing and then freeze it. And then bring it out and crack it.
It's not necessary with this. Okay, so it's nicely cracked, and then one other little thing you can do is sort of antique it with just a little bit going over it with the ink so that it picks up those cracks.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
You just see them a little better.
And that's what the final result is. Now, if you don't want the cracking, then just don't do it. Go ahead and do your ultra thick and do your stamping. Just don't forget to ink your stamp before you impress it in there. Now we have something else, and this is using cutting dies. So we've done embossing folders, and now cutting dies. This happens to be the 3 butterflies with 2 shadows. And as you can see, this butterfly also has a mixture of the copper and the gold.
It does.
I'd like to see it just, are you going to do it just with the gold?
No, I was going to do it with the copper and the gold, but I grabbed both the gold and the gold, so I think the copper is over there.
Yeah, let's just do it with the gold and see what's going on.
All right.
So this one is with both. This is with, obviously, the copper. These are on black cardstock, and just really effective.
So it's just beautiful. So you go ahead and do your die cut of your butterfly here with the butterflies cutting dies, and then I'm just going to ink that up with the Versamark pad. Get it all over. When I heat this, I'm going to use tweezers for sure, so that I don't burn my fingers. And then let's see, get that off of there. We'll go ahead and
dump it.
Dump it on there. Sprinkle it liberally. And I can even move it with the tweezers so that I don't take off. I don't want to take off any of the embossing powder either. So there we go.
Now, one thing too, if you end up feeling like you've missed a little spot, like maybe right there, you can, or where your tweezers are, you can go ahead and heat it, and then you can move your tweezers or put more Versamark and reheat.
Right.
So
here we go. It's on there. I'm going from the top. I'm not worried about it blowing away because I've Versamarked it fairly well, and it goes fairly quickly.
It does.
To really make it look molten, you can put another layer on here, but it's already so nice and thick. I mean, it's not really necessary. You can hit the parts that we've missed, that I've missed, like we were talking about.
I think it's absolutely brilliant that the embossing powder, I guess I would have thought it might run or do something strange. And
it's a little hot still.
Okay, but that it will just stay in those areas, and I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
It is.
Now there it is compared,
gorgeous.
a little bit hard to see it, with the copper and the gold next to it, but you can do them individually however you want. And in this case, the embossing powder was also brushed on the edges of the white, or I guess it's ivory burlap flowers. So there you have just a little bit of another twist.
Right, and that ties it into the rest of what you're saying. Lene said to be sure to heat those from a good distance away so that you don't burn the burlap.
Okay. You can tell this is an impatient group around here, huh? Now, our final card is mixing a couple of techniques, and this is also a die or cutting die that has been embossed. So it is our flying reindeer, one of my very favorites, with assorted snowflakes.
So this one was first cut out of acetate. This was done on acetate.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, it is. I checked, and yep, that's the acetate. So,
wow.
And it was covered with the white ultra high embossing powder and then heated, and it just, you can see all the texture that came across from that. It's
lumpy,
not warped or anything. It worked out great.
Boy, and that's very finely cut.
Oh,
that's neat.
It's beautiful. So were the snowflakes done in that way on the acetate. And let's see, and then back here you see more acetate. Right,
and that acetate, so with all the words, has been done out of the Christmas Words embossing folder. And so the acetate was embossed. And then?
And then the back of it was painted with picket fence distress paint, which you can sort of barely see because this one we use a lot, but this is the white. We use it on a lot of things. I have the acetate here that's been embossed. So the raised area of the lettering is on this side. And if I turn it over, I can paint it and get into some of those areas with the embossing, with the distress paint.
And since the paint container has a dauber on the top of it, you can just use that and spread it all over. Now, you're not painting it terribly thick. You really just want to get the color all over it because you're going to end up wiping it off.
That's right. So I'm just going to do a little bit, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and try to wipe off just on the upper parts and leave it behind on the words. So if it's, you can get it to leave into the words. I think if you let it sit for a few seconds and then you go back with your paper towel just a little bit wet, that would help. And if you need a little bit more paint, you can go back and do this a couple of times and the paint will set in there a little more.
And when I've done this before, I've actually been more aggressive than you are right now. You're being very gentle. Yeah, I've just wiped that sucker off.
Here we go.
Okay, then when you turn it over, there is enough left that you are going to see. And you get kind of that streaky chalkboard look.
Okay, great.
So it's really a clever technique. Now here it is. So we've got our die cut reindeer out of acetate, heat embossed with the white ultra thick, then embossed this, painted the back, and then put everything on the blue snowflakes holographic because it's just so doggone pretty.
It is beautiful. And this is from one of the Puddle trims, fancy trim set. It has this crochet and this great little twine cording down here.
We've got Blessings, which comes from a dazzle on the inside, just a little more of the dazzles, but this tiny snowflake has also been heat embossed with the white.
Heat embossed, and then just a few cut out of the blue snowflakes, holographic.
So we have used all of the embossing powders, right?
All of them.
So glitter, clear, and ultra thick.
Ultra high, metallic looks, just beautiful, and lots of fun techniques.
And we think it's a wow. Sorry, I couldn't resist.